secondhand, you're buying something that's already been there. You're not really impacting a lot of what's happening now. So, Sungi, how long you sew, right? You used to? Who else sews in here? Nobody? All right. Sungi, how long would it take you? How long would it take you to sew a pair of jeans?
It just depends what for mass production.
For mass production?
Easily 30 minutes.
30 minutes, okay. So if you're buying them from a store that costs $30, is the store taking, if you're selling to a store, is the store taking 50% or are they taking more?
Okay, our markup system here is pretty, it's pretty high. So you'd say that the labor input would probably be what, 7%?
7%? Yeah, okay. For labor here?
Of the whole production cost of labor.
Cost of labor? And then that's not including the cost of goods?
That's the whole chain, from
right.
your cutter to your pattern maker, your production guy.
And you're saying you're thinking you're going to take about 15 minutes per pair of jeans, right?
About 30 minutes.
30. Sorry. 30 minutes. That's very quick.
Yeah, for mass production.
For mass production, yeah. So, and then the store is taking how much of this 30?
Probably
50%?
20 to 25%.
The store is taking 20 to 25% here?
In terms of the markup.
In terms of the markup.
Well, they should really do 17.5
as actual figures.
because our
Like,
taxes.
when you used to produce them, what did you sell them to the store for $20? So I'd probably say the store gets $10.
The store gets $10. Oh, that's interesting. In the
I'm just
US?
saying, if you use 25 to 30%, so if you use actual figures, it's a bit clear.
Okay. So in the US, the store, and I wasn't clear about that, that's interesting. The store markup is about 2.5. So I'm selling to a store, something that's $10 and they're selling it for 25. Yeah, so that they're taking a much larger markup. So we'll use that. So $10, right? $10. A store in the US is marking it up 2.5. So they're selling it for 25. And they need that too, because in the US they're doing a lot of discounts. So by the end they may mark your price down by 20%. They may mark it down by another 50% as it starts to get down to the last piece. And this is specifically apparel. So you're seeing. And here we're saying they're taking what again?
$10.
Maybe $10. Okay. So let's see. The manufacturer is selling it for 20.
Training,
Yeah. And this is So if it's being imported, is there going to be import tax here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's usually evaded.
It's usually what?
Our duty on textiles is actually very high. So we have a lot of people here. It's actually 40%.
120%.
It's meant to be 120%, but that's why most people don't bring in things through a lethal channel. Because why our duty is very high is that it's meant to be deterring the import of both second-hand clothing as well as imported.
Yes. So imports and second-hand clothing
I really have taken they've really made a big impact on our economy, which is why I stopped manufacturing.
Right. You stopped and Sungi stopped manufacturing because she can't sell her goods at the price that it would be feasible for her to sustain her lifestyle.
Story of our lives.
Yeah, right. And I feel the same strain in the U.S. I get it. And we're talking about how China is bringing these products in and they're not paying their people high enough wages to sustain their lifestyle. So how can somebody in Zimbabwe compete with somebody in China who's not getting paid? Is there any possible way? No. I think it needs to come from the community understanding what they're investing into. If they're investing into something that's coming from another country that is not supporting their community in a sustainable way, you're impacting their lives as much as you're impacting your local artisan lives because you're not purchasing items from them, right? So in a sense, and this is what I've contributed it to, in a sense, I feel as though if I'm buying something that has a label that's made in China, I'm supporting somebody who's being forced to work there. And I'm just not okay with that. So my number one priority when I walk into a store, I make it very vocal, because most Americans don't. They don't say, where's that made? That's not, they want to know, number one, how much is it? And I don't think that's the right question, because I'd much rather invest in something that I can see an impact being made in my own community, and I'd much rather invest in something that I know is going to be amazing quality. So I'll look at the quality, I'll look at where it's coming from, and I want to know that I'm impacting people. I start to pick up on the brands and the companies that I know are doing these, and I start to try and stay very, very dedicated to those people that I know are doing it.
I think it's tough here in Zimbabwe for us to do that with clothing, shoes, and so forth. But with food and consumables, I think we can, because the price differences are very slight. You find milk from South Africa might be $1.25 for a liter versus locally produced $1.30. I'm willing to pay that extra 5 cents because Dairy Board is making it versus it's coming from Clover. So I think on clothing and apparel, it's tough because it's not a necessity. It is a necessity, but it's not something, I don't know, it's hard to compete.
It's not,
but on the food.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So maybe to give a bit of a background on what Kristen is trying to say, it's more of a mindset shift within the local people. There's a huge drive that is being pushed by President Barack Obama at the moment in the US, because what used to happen is a lot of companies used to have their manufacturing plants in the US, but then they started to ship their manufacturing plants outside the US, and jobs were lost. People started losing their employment because you are paying someone maybe $2 an hour in China to run your production, but in the US it would cost you maybe $4 or $5 to pay the same person. So companies started moving out their operations into other countries, in India, in China. But then it had a huge impact now. They started losing jobs in the US. So the drive is called reshoring. All the companies are being now encouraged to come back in the US to try and support local industries. You set up your own industry, manufacturing plants, local people start to come in and get employment, so unemployment starts to go down. In as much as it is a bit more expensive for the company to run its operations in America and sell the product to you at a premium, it's much better for the entire economy as a whole if people are embracing that philosophy. So you see a lot of companies now trying to do the same. So as we grow with our businesses, it may not be feasible now because of the prevailing economic conditions, but it should be something as business leaders of the future that we should also have at the back of our minds to say, if I buy something from China, it's some guy in China who's getting richer, he's going to have enough money to start developing his own community. So why not, if I buy something that is local, which means that company, even if it's a bit more expensive than getting from someone who's from China, that person also now has other people that he can employ from our local community. If they're doing corporate social responsibility, they're also impacting in our own community. So this is the Made in America drive that is trying to be pushed in the US, which is something that we think we should also have. We have a group here in Zimbabwe which is trying to push the Buy Zimbabwe campaign. So it's a mindset shift that we should also push as businesses. We may not feel it now, because we are on the consumer side. But the moment you start running your own business, that's when you begin to realize the importance of this philosophy. She's an example of a business that has been shut down because people don't have the Buy Zimbabwe mindset. So your business in the future, the business that you have now, if we persist with this behavior, it may end up being uncompetitive and they're forced to close. So I think this is the background of the discussion from where she's coming to.
And I think it's important to realize too, if you start having that mind shift, I don't think tomorrow you're going to go out and say, I'm only buying Zimbabwe products, because it could be very difficult to do that, right? Yeah. But if, tomorrow Tawana decides, okay, I'm going to go spend $1.35 on milk instead of $1.20, it's an easy shift, right? And you're only going, well, I'm not making that much of an impact. If Tawana does it, and everybody else in this room does it, that's so much more pull, and you're investing your money back into your own country versus throwing it to somewhere else, right? Yeah.
I agree, totally. I totally agree with you. It's just, it's really tough. Do we have the capacity to purchase? So we're working on it. I mean, I think
I think I understood where my sister is coming
it's
from.
frustrating.
I think the will to buy Zimbabwean products, because Zimbabwean, I think they are aware of the superiority of our products, say in food, even in textiles. But the problem now is Zimbabweans are cash strapped. The reason they buy plastic Chinese products because they can't afford the local product.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like the will is not there to buy Zimbabwe.
You know, and honestly, it's the same in the U.S. It's not different. There are people in the U.S. who are struggling just as, you know, just as much, and they feel the same way.
Yeah, I think we say we are cash strapped. The point two goes to what Victor said, durability, sustainability of the product. These Chinese products we are having, 2 days. For some of us, walk for long distance, maybe a few hours.
Yes.
Yeah, so we want to talk about that.
Two contributions. I was speaking to some of the business people in the ICT sector, and I was telling them about a trip I made to China. And what really blew me away was I was speaking to the Chinese factory owner. He was explaining to me that, okay, we've got 3 factories. This factory is here, and then the other one's over there, and the other one's over there. So I'm thinking, wow, why do you have 3 factories? And surely you want to consolidate. So he explains to me that, no, we started this factory about 10 years ago, and it got too big, but all the factories around were taken, so we couldn't grow here. So then we had to go to that complex about 5 years ago, and then that one got too big, but all the factories around there were taken, so now we have to have the 3rd factory. And a little light bulb sprung in my head, and it said, okay, guys, I found all the Zimbabwean jobs. Guess where they are? China. I mean, I'm telling the story about the factories, but you can see the growth. These guys are growing. It's amazing. Business is booming. So that's just the one factor. But then the other factor, I think we need to balance. So we want to all buy Zim and buy America and all that, but look, we're going through a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
Right now, I've got a container coming from China. Why? Because the quality and the price and the deal, I can't get that. I can't make it here. I can't get it.
So the deal, the quality or the deal?
No, I agree. I agree.
I'm saying the quality, the deal,
The price.
the price, it makes sense.
Okay.
So that's another problem that we have in the U.S. too. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So do you want to start? Do you want to elaborate?
So I just wanted to say we have to balance what we're saying, because if we don't,
Right.
we'll end up in this skew of buy Zim, buy. But there's a reason why we're not buying Zim. There's a reason why this container is on the ocean. It's because the economics. So it's not, I mean, I don't know. I haven't dug into every factory in China, but I'm sure there's some Chinese factories that are doing good things. It doesn't necessarily mean.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. I think there are some Chinese factories that are doing great things.
So I'm just saying that we've got to balance the fact that because of globalization, things are being made cheaper out there.
Yes.
And so they're more competitive. So in the Bill Gates way of thinking about it, what it says is that, okay, so we might not make shoes, but what are we Zimbabweans really good at? What opportunities do we have to compete globally? And I'll then spit out a ton. So jewelry, if we jump into jewelry as Zimbabweans, we should knock everybody else out, because we've got a ton of raw material here. And we could make a ton of jewelry.
That's true.
Cheaper than they could get it from here.
But I do think you touch on a really good point with the quality, and Sinki and I were talking about this earlier, that the quality of products, sometimes in the US, and I see this coming through our incubator, you'll find the quality can be lacking. And that becomes an issue, because if I'm going to go pay a higher price point for somebody to make something, I expect the quality to be there as well. And I think that comes with infrastructure. You know, so when you're developing your products, you want to make sure that you're competing on that global level. And why are people buying things from China? Because there's a level of quality to them, as well as the price point is an amazing deal. And I can see that in, you know, especially the sewn products. What other industries here do you see it in?
Yeah, I see it in clothing, I see it in jewelry, I think in all aspects of most locally manufactured things except for food. Because you find that even packaging is a very big problem. There's so many good products out of Zimbabwe, but they don't make the export market on shelves, especially even just beyond our border, just into South Africa, because the packaging is not appealing.
The packaging,
The design of the packaging, just the small things we take for granted. And I think like what I was saying to you, Kristen, earlier on, there's a lot of creativity out of Zimbabwe and commitment to do so much. I think everybody's an entrepreneur in their own way, especially if you go to the high density areas, but they come short from the quality aspect.
In the US, we even have competitions for who can design the best packaging. The product is fictitious. The packaging, though, they have competitions for who can design the best packaging, which I find amazing. That it's very similar to, like, I think if you're all familiar, you eat with your eyes first. Same when you're selling a product, the packaging must look beautiful, and that's going to intrigue somebody to pick it up and buy it. And maybe that'll help them get invested in spending a few extra dollars because they're finding something that they're attaching themselves to. The other thing that I find to be a big help in my industry is telling a story. Get them invested in your story. I have an individual who's been coming. She's still working on her quality. I'm wearing her jeans today. She makes them out of Golden, Colorado. But she tells her story. She has beautiful packaging, and she starts to tell her story about, I'm using surplus fabric, I'm making it all in the United States, and then she is spreading this word out on the internet and using those words that are attracting people to her business, and she's starting to get this following of people who are very interested in those kinds of ideas and that movement. So she's starting to create a movement and making sure that people are connecting, and she's sharing videos of behind the scenes and making her business very transparent. So people, because that's one thing that you lose going overseas. You lose the transparency. Like you're telling me a shipping container is coming from China, but you know what it looks like. You've been to the place, but how do I know what it looks like? How does the end consumer know what it looks like? Can you share that story with them at all, or is that something that would be impactful to helping sell your product?
We come from a country where we have a lot of political spin. Okay. So I'm sure I could spin something up. I'm sure we could spin this around.
You're not emotional with that.
I think Zimbabwe is not emotional. We don't shop from the heart. You don't read a package and say, a certain percentage is going to orphans. Well, people are very much, I think quality and price play a bigger part to selling the story.
I think the U.S. is the exact same way, right? I think you're hearing my story, but the U.S., like I said, I have friends that will go shop at the cheap stores. The cheap stores are Forever 21, they're at H&M, and they're like, I got this Walmart, I've got this great deal, I got a $10 pair of jeans, and they go, well, I don't understand your business. Why are you selling a tank top for $148? Who in the world is going to buy that? And I'm like, there are people out there that care about this. They care about made in the U.S. They care about good quality. And then she told me, it was very interesting to me. She informed me that she didn't understand why my clothes were so much. And then she goes, oh, I get it. Because you sew your garments and the people in China are just machine operators. And I was like, how do you think a garment is made? And she goes, well, they're just operating the machine. I'm like, do you literally think that you can just take a piece of fabric, throw it in a machine, and out pops, a finished piece of good? We all sew it. Every textile you've had on your body has been touched by many hands. So why do you think that somebody in China is not sewing your goods? I found it very interesting. There's very much a vague understanding in the U.S. of what is actually happening, and they turn a blind eye.
I'm talking about you do competitions on packaging only. Right. You also go to community competitions whereby you do products made out of local resources in a community, like natural resources and recycled material.
Do we have places that are...
You do something like that in the US?
Where the competitions?
competition or some product like that. I want to find that out.